While other people awaken superpowers and become friends with loyal dogs and singing birds, I ended up with what might be the smelliest superpower in the entire solar system, the ability to communicate with rats, flies, and cockroaches, the ultimate sewer intelligence network. Ironically, it's precisely because humans ignore and look down on these tiny creatures hiding in drains and dark corners that I've been able to stay one step ahead of the police whenever my little rat informants accidentally witness a crime scene. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to QuickBuzzBig. Your support is the biggest motivation for us to keep bringing you new videos every single day. Thanks for watching. Please continue listening to the story. Kai paid no attention to the attitude. He stood up and offered his hand first. Hello, President Doan. I'm Kai. Don Jia shook his hand lazily, a polite business smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Oh, Captain Do? My apologies. I was occupied with something earlier and kept you waiting. It's fine, Kai replied briefly. He then gestured toward Lam Fong and me. This is Officer Tran and Officer Ha. They're both members of my team. I paused for a fraction of a second before immediately understanding his intention. He was concealing my identity as a special consultant to avoid unnecessary complications. So I wisely kept quiet and offered no correction. Don Jia nodded and inclined his head slightly toward us. Hello, Officer Tran, Officer Ha. His gaze lingered on me for a second or two, silently evaluating me before moving away again. His expression remained perfectly calm. If this man truly was the serial killer they were hunting, then his psychological composure was genuinely terrifying. Standing face to face with criminal investigators, he showed not the slightest hint of nervousness. Everyone in the room seemed to be playing a role in a carefully scripted performance. Once everyone had settled into their seats, Don Jia crossed one leg over the other and leaned back against the sofa with an air of arrogance. I heard from my assistant that you're here because you want my cooperation in a homicide investigation, correct? Although fully aware of his attitude, Kai patiently repeated their purpose. That's correct. We'd like to know why, in the early hours of May 16 last year, your vehicle appeared in the vicinity of Vong Sun Road. Furthermore, that vehicle disappeared from camera coverage for over an hour before reappearing on the same route. Don Jia tapped the diamond ring on his finger against the armrest as though deep in thought. May 16 of last year, huh? That was a long time ago. How could I possibly remember something like that so clearly? Lam Fong frowned and was about to speak when a sharp glance from Kai stopped him. Remaining calm, Kai said. We hope you'll do your best to help us recall the details. Don Jia put on a troubled expression, though he didn't refuse. Pretending to rack his brain for a while, he slowly curled his lips into a half-smile. Ah, I remember now. Around May of last year, I was on a business trip in High Tea negotiating a contract. At the time, I wasn't even in Back Sun City. With practiced ease, he presented an alibi and completely denied being present during the time of the crime. Seeing his casual, dismissive attitude, Lam Fong could no longer hold back. He sprang to his feet. The traffic cameras clearly captured a black sedan with license plate back S8P8, registered under your name. That vehicle appeared on Vong Sun Road during the relevant time period. Don't tell me you're going to claim the footage was fabricated. Don Jia shot Lam Fong a disdainful look and smirked. Officer, do you have any idea how many luxury cars I own? Lam Fong blinked in confusion. What? Spreading both hands, Don Jia spoke in an unmistakably boastful tone. To be honest, even I can't keep track of how many cars I own anymore. There are simply too many. He shrugged. Some of them sit untouched in my garage for an entire year before I even touch the steering wheel. Then he added with a careless smile. Sometimes I go drinking, leave a car somewhere, and don't even remember where I parked it. Lam Fong frowned. But that car is registered under your name. There isn't a single theft report related to it in the police database. Don Jia burst out laughing. Haha. Are you kidding me? When did I ever say my car was stolen? Even I could feel my blood pressure rising as I listened to his slippery, evasive answers. Lam Fong's hand clenched into a fist as he struggled to suppress the anger threatening to explode. Through gritted teeth, he asked. If the car wasn't stolen, then why did it show up on Bong Sun Road while you were supposedly away on a business trip? Don Vaijia completely ignored Lam Fong. Instead, he turned to Du Kam Kai and lifted his chin provocatively. Captain Du, is your police department really so short-staffed that you have to recruit idiots like this? No wonder you've failed to solve this case after all these years. And now you're wasting your time harassing an innocent citizen like me. Publicly humiliated, Lam Fong exploded. What did you just say? Tu Tran, sit down. Du Kam Kai rose to his feet and barked the order. Lam Fong gritted his teeth and swallowed his rage. Though he said nothing further, his eyes had already turned red with fury. At that moment, I decided it was time to step in. I deliberately leaned forward, blocking Don Vaijia's line of sight toward Lam Fong. Then I looked straight at him and asked coldly. President Don, are you saying that someone else took your car without your knowledge, and that person was the one driving it when it appeared on the surveillance footage that night? Don Vaijia let out a snort, amusement dancing in his eyes. Not bad. You're pretty smart for a police officer. That's right. I usually leave my car keys lying around in the garage. Anyone who wants to borrow a car can just go down and take one. Du Kam Kai pressed further. So you don't know who drove your car that night? Don Vaijia's expression turned impatient. In an irritated tone, he replied. I've already said it over and over again. At the time, I was all the way over in high tea. How am I supposed to know which man or woman took my car? Lam Fong could tolerate being called an idiot, but he absolutely could not tolerate this arrogant rich brat showing such disrespect toward the superior he deeply admired. He slammed his hand on the table and spoke sharply. That vehicle is your property. You are responsible for managing it. Right now, that car is a crucial piece of evidence directly connected to a serious murder case. If you're deliberately concealing the identity of the person who borrowed it, you're committing the crime of harboring a criminal. Don Vaijia burst into laughter. Yet beneath the laughter lurked unmistakable cruelty and arrogance. Listen, buddy. Are you trying to scare me with the law? He leaned back and smirked. Open your eyes and take a good look. Do you have any idea how many top-tier legal teams stand behind me? I sneered inwardly. Who cared how many lawyers he had? Once the evidence was laid out in black and white, even a billion lawyers wouldn't be able to save him. I continued in a firm tone. President Don, even if you were away on a business trip at the time, your butler was certainly still at home. The garage inside this estate is under his supervision. Who came and went, who took which vehicle, your butler would know those details like the back of his hand. Don Vaijia fell silent. For a moment, he had no response. To keep the conversation from completely breaking down, Du Kam Kai stepped in and played the role of the reasonable officer. Lowering his voice, he said. President Don, my subordinate spoke a bit harshly. On his behalf, I'd like to apologize. Would you please ask your butler to come here so we can verify a few details? Lam Fong's expression changed several times. He wanted to object, but in the end he clenched his teeth, swallowed his protest, and lowered his head without saying a word. Reluctantly, Don Vaijia pressed the call button for the butler. During the questioning, the butler firmly stated that the black sedan had not been present in the villa's garage at any point during May of the previous year. Perhaps young Master Don lent it to a friend before that, the butler replied respectfully. Don Vaijia slapped his forehead as if he had suddenly remembered something. Ah, that's right. My memory has been terrible lately. I probably lent it to someone before then. After saying that, he returned to his indifferent attitude and waved dismissively. There. We're done here. Go do whatever work you people came to do. The butler gave a slight bow and quickly withdrew from the room. Du Kam Kai had already anticipated that this encounter with a privileged rich heir would not go smoothly, but Don Vigia's arrogance and lack of cooperation were still worse than expected. Forcing down his anger, team leader Du lowered his voice and patiently asked again. President Don, please try to recall who you gave the keys of that car to. Whether it was a relative or a friend, borrowing a car during a stormy night like that must have been for something urgent. There's no way you have absolutely no impression of it. At that moment, I keenly caught a flash of light in Don Vigia's eyes. He paused for a fraction of a second. Clearly, a name had just popped into his mind. But very quickly, his expression returned to indifference. I already said I don't remember. It was years ago, who could possibly remember something like that? Seeing that they couldn't get anything out of him, Du Kamkai changed direction. Then where is that car now? We need to bring it back to the bureau for inspection and evidence collection. Don Vigia lifted his chin and sneered. It's in the underground garage. If you want to check it, feel free to take it. I have plenty of cars anyway. Fortunately, this spoiled young master might have a poor memory when it came to evasion, but he still clearly remembered where he dumped his cars. The black sedan with license plate back S8P8 was indeed parked, covered in dust, in the basement garage. Du Kamkai conducted a preliminary inspection around the vehicle, then handed the keys to Lam Fong, instructing him to drive it straight back to the bureau for forensic analysis. Of course, the ideal approach would have been to deploy the entire forensic team to the Don residence, seal off the garage, and conduct an on-site investigation. But given Don Vigia's uncooperative attitude, and the fact that they did not yet have enough hard evidence to obtain an emergency search warrant, it was impossible to force full compliance. After all, more than a year had passed since the case. Crucial biological evidence such as DNA, blood traces, or hair strands, if any had ever existed on the car, had likely already been erased by time or by the perpetrator's cleanup efforts. Bringing the vehicle back to the bureau for examination would not significantly affect the outcome. Before leaving, I pulled off a shameless move, clutching my stomach and pretending to be uncomfortable. Sorry, President Don, the tea was too good. Could I borrow your restroom for a moment? Don Vigia waved his hand casually, gesturing toward the hallway. Go ahead. I nodded in thanks, then bolted toward the bathroom as if I was in urgent distress. The moment I slipped inside, I locked the door with a click, pressed my ear against it for a moment to make sure no one was wandering around the hallway, then hurriedly reached into my backpack and pulled out the bottle containing Mike's small elite squad. I opened the bottle cap and released all 7 cockroaches into the sink, issuing the command. Listen carefully. Spread out and search every corner of this villa. Eavesdrop on everything the people here are saying. Especially keep an eye on Don Vigia from earlier, see who he contacts and what shady things he does. I added an exit plan. Tomorrow night, same time, I'll be waiting outside the villa wall. You all regroup there and report back. Having been trapped in the suffocating plastic bottle since yesterday, the cockroaches were extremely excited now that they were finally assigned a mission, their antennae trembling non-stop. I looked over the group again. Honestly, all 7 of them looked exactly the same, shiny brown bodies, and I couldn't tell them apart. I randomly pointed at one that looked the most capable. Lang 107. You're the smartest and fastest one. When I come back later, you'll follow and monitor Don Vigia. The cockroach I pointed at froze for a second, then cautiously corrected me. Sister Ha. I'm Lang 500. I paused. Oh no. That was embarrassing. I'd mistaken personnel right in front of the whole team. I quickly coughed and acted as if nothing had happened. Ahem, yeah, I know. Just testing your reflexes. You all look too similar, I got dizzy. At that moment, the real Lang 107 slowly crawled forward from behind and said clearly and decisively. Sister Ha, don't worry. Just leave the mission to me. I nodded and added one more reminder. Be careful. Rich villas like this often spray insecticide regularly. If you mess around, you might get wiped out instantly, don't get exposed. The cockroach nodded firmly. Yes, I understand, Sister Ha. But just as it spoke, I suddenly froze. This voice didn't sound like Lang 107. I looked down more carefully. The cockroach I had just assigned the mission to wasn't Lang 107 at all. Sister Ha. Another cockroach spoke up hesitantly. It was Lang 666, the chubby younger sister of Lang 107. Its voice was both wronged and on the verge of tears. I was scared you'd call my brother by mistake again. He got so offended he quit, so I had to take his place. Needless to say, my face was now burning red like a ripe persimmon. Thanks for covering for me. Lang 666. I sighed. But saying that just makes it more embarrassing for me. As a leader who couldn't even remember her own subordinates' faces, this was a system-level failure. At this moment, Lang 107, who had extremely high EQ, quickly stepped in to smooth things over. Sister Ha, don't worry about assigning us tasks. I'll tail that guy down by Gia 24/7. If he goes to the toilet, checks his phone, or even breathes a little heavier, I'll record it all in my brain. Just trust me. I finally felt relieved and smiled in encouragement. All right. Good job, everyone. Tomorrow night, we'll withdraw. I'll throw you all a proper sweet buffet. The cockroaches cheered loudly in silence, though humans couldn't hear their ultrasonic signals. I turned on the faucet just to create cover noise, wiped my hands, and opened the door to leave. But the moment my foot was about to step out, I instinctively looked back. The sink was empty. In just a blink of an eye, all 7 underworld agents had dispersed, disappearing without a trace, slipping deep into the darkest corners of the villa. The stealth ability of cockroaches was truly a peak creation of nature. I felt both relieved to have such an elite intelligence team, and a slight chill running down my spine. Just imagining if there were that many of them hiding inside my own house, silently watching everything. Honestly, it was terrifying. At this moment, inside the luxurious villa, Don Vigia leaned lazily back on the Italian leather sofa. A faint, mocking smile curved at the corner of his lips. He tilted his chin and waved the butler and servants out of the room. The secret that was about to unfold could not be heard by a third person. Hello, is this the CEO? Don Vigia spoke casually, his tone carrying 40% mockery and 60% intimidation. Those annoying police officers just came by again for tea. They kept rambling about Vong Sun Road, and something about surveillance cameras capturing my car near the crime scene. A suffocating silence immediately fell on the other end of the line. But Don Vigia didn't care. He continued to gently tap the edge of his phone, speaking leisurely. Think about it. That happened last year. Who could possibly remember something like that? You also know I have a whole collection of luxury cars. Friends borrow them for whatever they need, I can't possibly keep track of all of it. He deliberately elongated his tone, enunciating each word. But I just remembered something. Around April or May last year, after you sent me home, you borrowed one of my cars. It took you several months before you finally returned it. The other end of the line remained silent. Don Vigia brought the phone closer to his ear, his expression filled with confidence, as if waiting for prey to walk straight into a trap. Finally, a low male voice sounded. The speaker was young, likely under 30, but his tone was extremely steady, cold and unreadable. Yes, that did happen. The man replied calmly. When I drove it back, I forgot about it. But didn't I already return it to you afterward? Hearing the other party deliberately dodging the point, Don Vigia let out a cold snort. Trying to avoid the issue? Fine. Then I'll contact the police directly. Let them ask you what exactly you were doing on the night of May 16th on Vong Sun Road. He emphasized each word, coldly. You think you can wash your hands clean just by denying it? The voice on the other end immediately turned sharp. What exactly do you want? Don Vigia smiled faintly. His prey had finally started to show cracks. He spoke slowly. I'm not someone who likes to carry unnecessary baggage. What you did, or where you dumped that body. I don't care. He paused slightly, then added. But don't drag me into it. His voice sharpened. I heard your company just won a bid for the ecological lake project on the mountain. Someone as careful as you surely wouldn't leave behind any fatal evidence, right? The other end immediately snapped. Don't you, Gia, where are you right now? Didn't the police just leave your house? Don Gia casually rested his leg on the coffee table, his posture relaxed and arrogant. I'm at home. Don't worry. I waited until the police car was out of sight before calling you. He let out a faint laugh. Heaven knows, earth knows, I know, you know. No one else knows. But what he didn't know was. Beneath that expensive Italian leather sofa, 2 cockroach antennae were trembling with excitement. Humans couldn't hear it, but the little strong surveillance team I had deployed had already recorded the entire conversation, without missing a single word. At the same time, I was sitting obediently in the passenger seat. The car driven by team leader Du Kam Kai had already left the luxurious villa district. Unable to bear the oppressive silence inside the car, I spoke up. Team leader do you really think Don Gia is the culprit? Du Kam Kai's gaze remained fixed ahead, his voice even and unchanged. Without solid evidence, I cannot conclude anyone is guilty. He paused slightly. But judging from his behavior, I don't believe he is the one who committed those 6 serial murders. I slightly raised my head and continued, my tone firmer. To be honest, I've never dealt with a criminal of that level in real life, nor have I studied criminal psychology in depth. But Don Gia's behavior is too calm. He doesn't even bother hiding his lack of interest in the case. I took a breath and continued analyzing. More importantly, in terms of modus operandi, he doesn't look like the perpetrator. I tapped my fingers lightly on my thigh and spoke faster. A person capable of dismembering a body, disposing of it in the middle of a rainy night, and leaving no DNA traces for 6 years, must be extremely meticulous and highly skilled at counter-investigation. But Don Gia is the careless, reckless type. Even when meeting guests at home, he doesn't bother to button his shirt properly. Think about it, how could someone like that have the patience and precision to execute such a sophisticated chain of serial murders? The car fell silent for a few seconds. Du Kam Kai glanced at me, his eyes carrying a hint of evaluation. I didn't expect you to be this observant, he said slowly. At present, Don Gia's profile indeed does not match the psychological profile of the killer. He is tall, wealthy, and good-looking. Someone like him would naturally have no shortage of social connections. It is difficult to imagine a psychological breakdown that would turn him into such a cold-blooded murderer. I nodded. But his car appeared at the crime scene, that is a fact. He is definitely involved. From now on, will you assign someone to monitor him 24/7? Du Kam Kai tapped lightly on the steering wheel. With his current status, without core evidence, we can only conduct remote surveillance to define his activity scope. People with money and influence don't easily hand over car keys to others. If any incident occurs, legal responsibility becomes very complicated. The car stopped at a red light. Suddenly, Du Kam Kai turned to look at me, his voice lowering slightly. Sometimes I almost forget you were hired as a special consultant, because of your ability to sense the aura of elimination. I froze for a moment. My mind instantly exploded. What the hell? Aura of elimination? Oh my god, Lam Fong, what kind of nonsense excuse did you feed your superior? Even though I was already used to my colleague's abnormality level, hearing a serious man like Du Kam Kai repeat that phrase so solemnly still made all 10 of my toes curl in embarrassment. This feeling could only be described as wanting to find a hole in the ground and disappear. I forced myself to stay calm, staring straight ahead as I replied awkwardly. Besides that kind of intuitive, psychic-like perception, I've also read some criminal investigation materials. Du Kam Kai seemed about to say something more, but the light turned green. The cars ahead began moving, and he had no choice but to focus on driving again. He only left me with one sentence filled with hope. Anyway, I hope you, Hamak, can help us catch the killer before the seventh victim appears. I responded softly, my gaze drifting out the window. I also hope we can catch the person behind everything soon. In my mind, the image of the suspicious vehicle that had just been brought back to the bureau surfaced clearly again. Inside that car, everything was eerily clean. Not a single drop of syrup, not a strand of hair from a second person, only Lam Fong's DNA. That almost unnaturally perfect cleanliness sent a chill down one's spine. It felt as if an invisible hand had deliberately erased every trace of crime. Shortly after, team leader Du Kem Kai frowned and immediately called to question Don Baijia. But on the other end of the line, the young rich heir only casually repeated his usual script: too many luxury cars, keys thrown around carelessly, friends borrowing them without him remembering. Vague, evasive words, offering absolutely no useful leads. A completely uncooperative attitude. At this point, even more troubling news arrived. Lam Fong and the investigation team had just verified Don Baijia's alibi, and it was as solid as a fortress wall. Not only was he not in High City during the time of the May case last year, but even at the time of the very first murder 5 years ago, he had been attending a banquet in an entirely different city. There was no possibility of him splitting into 2 bodies to travel, commit the crimes, and dispose of evidence like a ghost. The newly discovered lead was immediately shut down. The investigation once again hit a dead end. Lam Fong looked extremely frustrated. He stubbornly believed that Don Baijia was still the hidden culprit from the rainy night, only that the police had not yet found his flaw. In the midst of this impasse, he came up with a brilliant idea: take me to re-examine all 5 locations where the victims' bodies had previously been discovered. The goal? Of course, to let me sense the aura of elimination. Hearing his enthusiasm, I felt like screaming internally. Can we please forget that ridiculous excuse already? But once you've started something, you have to follow through. I was the one who planted that nonsense in his head, so it was only natural that Lam Fong believed it completely now. To be honest, I also wanted to find more clues. But ironically, the city's rapid urbanization had changed everything too fast. The landscape had transformed in just 1 year to an almost unrecognizable degree. The vacant lots where the murders once took place had already become high-rise buildings and commercial centers packed tightly together. I secretly released 3 intelligence units to scout the area, but the results were completely empty. The rats that had once witnessed those cases had either aged and disappeared or already relocated long ago. The newer generations knew nothing. After running around all day, I was exhausted and out of breath. Looking at the calendar, the month of May, the period when the killer usually struck, was approaching, yet the police still had no core evidence in hand. Everyone's anxiety was clearly showing on their faces. Lam Fong was becoming more and more discouraged. He angrily popped open a bottle of water, tilted his head back and drank deeply, then wiped his mouth and sneered bitterly. This damn monster actually has great feng shui sense. Damn it, why is it that every time he disposes of a body, that area gets redeveloped soon after? Now that the terrain had been completely bulldozed and rebuilt, finding any further clues was almost impossible. But that casual complaint from Lam Fong struck me like lightning. Right. Why did all 6 disposal sites happen to be developed into new projects shortly afterward? In a city's outskirts, there were hundreds of vacant lots waiting for development. Some remained untouched for 1 or 2 years, others even over a decade. Yet these particular locations all shared the same strange fate. The probability of such a coincidence was lower than winning the lottery. A surge of excitement rose in my chest. I slapped Lam Fong on the shoulder and said firmly, "Officer Lam, we need to immediately reopen the case files. Investigate whether anyone in Don Baijia's network is involved in real estate or has access to urban planning information." Lam Fong froze for 5 seconds. He stared at me in shock and stammered. You're not telling me you can even sense the aura of elimination in real estate projects, are you?" I could only roll my eyes inwardly. His imagination really had no limits. I cleared my throat and quickly brought the reasoning back on track. It's not some supernatural sensing. It's logic. After I finished explaining, Lam Fang's expression changed. His eyes lit up like he had just spotted a beam of light in the darkness. He immediately realized the key suspicious point. Finally, the deadlock had a crack. Without wasting another second, Lam Fang turned the car around and floored the accelerator back to the bureau to re-examine all real estate-related records. The sky had already turned the gray of dusk. On the way back, I pretended to fall into thought and then spoke up. Officer Lam, later I want to visit the villa area of Donbai Jia. I need to see whether there are any unusual residual traces around there. Lam Fang nodded, showing he understood. All right. I'll report this to Captain Du and ask him to arrange a direct interrogation meeting for you. I immediately waved my hand. No need. I'm too busy for that. I just need to stay outside the perimeter, I don't have to go inside the villa. I said it very naturally, but in reality I was thinking about the two little spies laying 107 and laying 666 still inside under cover. There was no way I could tell the truth. Lam Fang looked slightly worried, but seeing how firm I was, he finally agreed. My colleague, Officer Hatu Trake, is stationed nearby. I'll let him know. If you want to go, you can, but you must pay attention to safety. I smiled and nodded in thanks. After dropping me off at the meeting point near Hatu Trake's checkpoint, Lam Fang immediately turned the car around and rushed back to the station. No one expected that when I met Hatu Trake and heard my made-up excuse about sensing aura, he would slightly curl his lips, revealing a strangely interested expression. He laughed lightly, half teasing, half joking. Well then, how about we go together? I'm also curious to see what this so-called aura actually feels like. My heart tightened. That knowing smile was enough to tell he was deliberately mocking my ridiculous supernatural excuse. I forced myself to keep a cold, professional expression and asked back. Officer Ha doesn't need to stay in the car on duty? Hatu Trake lifted his chin toward his colleague Tu Lu, who was sitting in the passenger seat, and said casually. Having Tu Lu here is enough. He can easily keep watch on the villa gate by himself. I raised an eyebrow and said bluntly, with sarcasm. What if Donbai Jia suddenly drives away later? If it's only Tu Lu, how can he drive and tail the suspect at the same time? Officer Ha leaving his post like this seems a bit irresponsible, doesn't it? Hit right in the weak spot, the smile on Hatu Trake's face disappeared instantly. He withdrew his teasing attitude and narrowed his eyes, staring at me for a long moment. Then suddenly, he laughed out loud. Haha, I was just joking. How could an ordinary person like me possibly sense something like an aura of disappearance? Officer Ha, feel free to do as you wish. But remember, if you notice anything unusual, call me immediately. As soon as he finished speaking, he rattled off an 11-digit phone number at machine gun speed. Without hesitation, I calmly took out my phone, tapped quickly, and saved it. Seeing that I didn't even ask him to repeat it once, Hatu Trake seemed unconvinced, thinking I was just showing off. He crossed his arms and challenged me. Officer Ha, are you sure you entered it correctly? Didn't miss a single digit? I said nothing. Instead, I pressed the call button decisively. Less than 2 seconds later, the phone in Hatu Trake's pocket vibrated violently and rang loudly. His face instantly froze, showing a mix of embarrassment and shock. He coughed lightly to recover and said. Ahem. Officer Ha really does have an excellent memory. I nodded calmly and left him with 3 cold words. You're welcome. Then I turned around and walked into the darkness without leaving a single extra glance or word behind. In the passenger seat, Tu Lu watched my disappearing figure fade into the night. He scratched his head in confusion and turned to ask. Officer Ha, I feel like you're kind of targeting Officer Ha. If it weren't for her, we wouldn't have found those important pieces of evidence earlier. Why do you keep making things difficult for her? Hatu Trake let out a cold snort. Me making things difficult? I'm just testing her abilities. Did you forget the Shuyan High District case? She already snatched a suspect right from under us. His tone tightened, and his eyes darkened. Now they even want to interfere in this rainy night case. Are you really willing to let an outsider step in and solve a case that our brothers have struggled for years to crack? In his heart, Hatu Trake was still filled with anger, unable to swallow the earlier aura of disappearance explanation that was full of nonsense and clearly made up. He genuinely could not understand what kind of bewitching spell I had cast on Lam Fong that made him believe such absurd nonsense without hesitation. A properly trained criminal police officer, yet he actually believed in this kind of ridiculous mysticism, something even a 3-year-old child would shake their head at. Hearing this, Tiu Lu frowned, feeling that his senior's logic was completely wrong. The young man muttered in protest. But that case originally belonged to Shiyan High District jurisdiction, so how can you say it was poached? Besides, Officer Ha is also a citizen of our back Sun City. Helping the police solve cases can't be considered as an outsider. While muttering, Tiu Lu suddenly felt Hatu Trake's bullet-like gaze shoot toward him, and his voice immediately grew softer until he fell silent. Knowing better, Tiu Lu quickly took out his binoculars and pretended to be extremely diligent at work. Yes, it's my shift to keep watch now. I'll keep my eyes fixed on the villa gate. Officer Ha, you can rest for a bit. If anything happens, I'll call immediately. Hatu Trake merely let out a cold snort from his throat and said nothing more. Back to me, of course I had no idea about the argument between those two officers. At that moment, I was using all my verbal skills to negotiate with the security guard at the villa area. The gate guard firmly held to one principle: if you are not the owner, or do not have the owner's permission, not even an ant is allowed through the gate. Fortunately, I had brought my consultant ID from the police department to prove my identity, and I had also legitimately entered this area with Captain Du during the day, so the guard reluctantly compromised. However, he still set clear conditions. I'll only allow you 1 hour. If you haven't come out by then, we will have to use batons to personally escort you out. I rubbed my temples, already feeling a headache coming on. Time was tight, and I could only silently pray in my heart, the Lang 107 special agents must absolutely not encounter any problems, and once night fell, they had to obediently come out and wait for me in the garden. The Dome Vigia villa was located deep inside the area, quite far from the main gate. Even though I hurried as fast as I could, it still took me over 10 minutes to arrive. By now, night had fully covered the luxurious residential area. The streetlights cast a dim yellow glow, stretching the shadows of trees unevenly across the ground. As I was sneaking forward, crouching low and searching around the dense bushes, a sharp, chirping voice suddenly rang in my mind. Sis Ha, we're here. I quickly bent down toward the grass, widening my eyes to look. As expected, under a hidden bush, the little strong mercenary squad was gathered together. I squatted down, took out a few candies I had prepared as rewards, quickly unwrapped them, and dropped them on the ground while softly coaxing. You must be hungry after working all day, right? Come here and have some sweets to recharge. The cockroaches immediately reacted to the smell of food, their antennae lighting up as they rushed onto the candies, chewing noisily and making excited hissing sounds. So good, sis. I'm full. I'm full. Watching them eat happily, an unconsciously gentle smile like that of an elderly mother appeared on my face. But that smile disappeared instantly when I noticed something chilling. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I silently counted again. Wrong. There were only 6. Just 6. I did not panic. I did not widen my eyes or shout. I just stared closely and began counting again. Each one, when called, would automatically step forward. I took a deep breath and turned to Lang 107. Report the head count. Who is missing? Or did someone suffer an incident of being eliminated? My heart suddenly sank. Although we had only worked together for a few days, and I still couldn't clearly distinguish each one, every single one had its own distinct personality. Lang 8 was the most reckless of them all, having once soloed a black rat. Lang 47 possessed an extraordinary light-footed technique, he could leap like he was flying. Lang 100 carried a calm, leader-like presence. Even Lang 107 had to listen to him. Lang 500 was gentle and kind, always taking care of the whole team. As for Lang 665 and Lang 6, they were the two little comic relief rookies, the biggest snack lovers in the squad. And yet now, one of them was missing. The more I thought about it, the heavier my mind felt. My voice trembled as I forced myself to ask. Which one is missing? Did someone get eliminated by a slipper strike, or poisoned? While still hugging onto a piece of candy, Lang 107 looked up. Its antennae trembled slightly before it replied. Report, it's Lang SIX's younger sister, sis. Hearing that, the candle in my heart went out with a soft poof. Oh my God. Why did it have to be that little glutton? I turned to look again. The remaining 6 faces were still buried in the candy, unnaturally calm. Perhaps because of their insect lifestyle, wandering day and night, they were already too used to the sudden elimination of companions. Seeing my exhausted sigh and twisted expression, Lang 107 finally realized I had misunderstood the situation. It quickly clarified. Oh no, sis, you misunderstood. Little Lang 6 hasn't been logged out. She just couldn't bear to leave her newly hatched babies behind. She plans to stay until all the eggs hatch, then bring the whole family back to reunite with you. I stared blankly and stammered. What? That little Lang 6 already gave birth? More precisely, she produced a huge egg case. Lang 107 scratched its antennae and began giving a street-level biology lecture. In our cockroach species, we only need to mate once to continuously produce eggs. That egg case must have already been developing for days. Who knew that while she was on a mission last night, she suddenly gave birth? In that moment, my brain was forcibly injected with biological knowledge I had never wanted in my entire life. I asked helplessly. So when will that thing hatch? Lang 107 calculated briefly. Probably a bit over a month, sis. 1 month. Oh heavens. That was far too long for an egg case to be sitting in the villa of a cleanliness-obsessed rich young master. No one knew what could happen in that time. An insecticide spray, or an unexpected deep cleaning operation might wipe Lang 6 out completely. It seemed I had no choice but to return to Don Vigia's villa once more and retrieve the mother and child nest of Lang 6. Thinking that, I sighed, tossed the half-eaten candies back into the empty water bottle, and ordered. All right, retreat. All of you get back into the bottle and follow me home. I'll find an excuse to come back in a few days and pick up Lang 6. The 6 mercenaries immediately clung to the bottle opening and crawled inside. I had just managed to tighten the cap and was about to shove it into my coat pocket when a familiar voice suddenly rang out in front of me. Officer Ha. I jumped in shock and looked up sharply. Under the dim streetlight, Don Vigia was standing there with both hands in his pockets, slowly walking toward me. His gaze locked directly onto the plastic bottle in my hand. The smirk on his face instantly froze. His expression twisted violently as he saw what was moving inside. He took half a step back, his voice tight and slightly disgusted. What's in that bottle? Are those cockroaches? Your taste is really that strange? My heart skipped a beat, but outwardly I still forced a calm, indifferent expression. Very naturally, I shoved the bottle into my coat pocket, pretending nothing had happened. Under the dim night light, Don Vigia's face darkened. His sharp gaze shot at me like a knife. He smirked coldly and said in a low voice. You think pretending to be deaf and blind will get you through this? That thing wriggling in your bottle is cockroaches, right? Who exactly are you? In the middle of the night, squatting in someone else's garden catching cockroaches, what the hell are you doing? While he was still aggressive, he suddenly froze. His eyebrows furrowed tightly, as if he had just realized a shocking conspiracy theory. Wait a second, where did these cockroaches come from? Don't tell me they crawled out of my house. Impossible. My villa is disinfected every day, there's absolutely no way there would be cockroaches. Unless, you deliberately brought them here and released them into my house? Hearing his reasoning, I broke out in a cold sweat, silently crying inside, "Brother, your deduction is actually sharp, you hit the target perfectly, but you aimed at the wrong direction." Seeing that I stayed silent like a mute, Don Vijaya became even more convinced that his theory was correct. His imagination began to run wild. I was impersonating a police consultant to investigate, secretly collaborating with a pest control company, deliberately releasing cockroaches into wealthy villas to create demand, and then profiting from commissions. The more he thought about it, the paler his face became. In his mind at that moment, his $1 million villa had probably already turned into a cockroach nest crawling everywhere. Without hesitation, Don Vijaya took out his phone, his voice furious. "I'm calling team leader Du right now to report your disgusting behavior. A police officer actually releasing cockroaches into people's homes to extort money? Hey, wait, don't act rashly." Panicked, I rushed forward, frantically waving my hands to stop him. My brain spun like a top. With no other choice, I blurted out a reason that sounded absurd, but strangely, somewhat reasonable. "It's not what you think. These cockroaches are my pets." "Yes, pets. Do you understand? I take care of them like they're precious. How could I possibly release them randomly?" Don Vijaya stared at me, the corner of his mouth curling into the ultimate mocking smile. "Look at my face. Do I look like an idiot to you, that I'd believe something this obviously made up?" As he spoke, his finger was already sliding toward team leader Du's number, ready to press call. In that moment, I felt completely cornered and blurted out. "I can prove it. These cockroaches are a genetically bred species, they're intelligent and extremely obedient to me." Suspicion filled Don Vijaya's eyes, but his hand paused. "You're saying cockroaches are your pets, and they actually listen to you?" I nodded firmly, so hard I nearly snapped my neck. At that moment, there was only one thought in my mind: whether this cleanliness-obsessed young heir believed it or not, tomorrow he would definitely call pest control to fumigate the entire villa. I had to get laying 6 and its egg case out of here tonight, no matter what. I lowered my voice, pretending to be regretful. "Actually, here's what happened. Yesterday when I came to your villa for the investigation, I accidentally dropped one of my pet cockroaches. Today I came all the way back just to find it." Hearing the words "a cockroach was dropped in my house yesterday," Don Vijaya's face went from pale to green, then gradually turned reddish-purple. He stared at me, his gaze as if trying to peel away my entire personality. In his eyes now, I was no longer a young police consultant, but a bizarre, filthy, hopelessly strange person. His disgust was so strong it felt like it was about to overflow from his eyes. Grinding his teeth, he said, "Mock, you're still acting, aren't you? Tell the truth, are you working with some pest control company? I can find out with just one phone call. Confess now, and maybe I'll still leave you a way out." I sighed helplessly, pretending to be resigned. "Mr. Doan, they really are my pets. And you wouldn't want a cockroach running around and turning into a whole colony inside your villa, right? Only I can call them out. Just let me in, I'll catch it and leave immediately." I had to admire my own lying skills. It was a perfect strike right at his weakness, cleanliness obsession. Sure enough, Don Vijaya began to waver. After a long internal struggle, he snapped. "Fine. I'll let you in to look." His eyes narrowed, voice icy. "If you can't find that disgusting pet, then even if you're from the police department, I won't let this go easily." With that, he snorted coldly, turned around, and strode toward the villa. I hurriedly followed behind. Seeing that he didn't look back, I immediately lowered my head toward my collar and whispered to the team leader hidden in my pocket. "Lang 107, spill it. Where is Lang 6 hiding?" From inside the plastic bottle, faint rustling sounds could be heard. "Report. Sis she's in the bathroom where you released us yesterday. The egg case is stuck on top of the mirror cabinet. Just reach up and you'll find it." Hearing that, I couldn't help but shiver. Well, once you've started something, you have to finish it. Since I had already claimed to be a pet owner raising cockroaches, then making physical contact with them should count as normal, right? Even though my skin was already erupting in goosebumps, I still forced myself to stay calm. Ugh. Just as I reached the main entrance, Donbai suddenly turned around. I jumped in shock and quickly shrank my neck, pretending to look up at the stars and moon as if I hadn't been secretly talking to my sleeve. He looked at me speechlessly and muttered. From her appearance, she doesn't look bad, so why does she have such a bizarre hobby? Inside, I was screaming, hobby? This is my survival skill, thank you very much. But outwardly, I could only endure it in silence. The old butler, seeing that his young master had only stepped out briefly before returning with the policewoman from earlier, was extremely surprised. After hearing the reason I had come back, to find cockroaches, his expression immediately changed, filled with the same mixture of confusion and horror as his young master. Unable to bear the oppressive atmosphere of disgust, I pointed toward the hallway. Yesterday while I was waiting in the living room, I used your bathroom. I'll go check there. Donbai grunted a humph and followed closely behind me without leaving a single step. He was probably afraid I might secretly open the bottle and release more cockroaches to destroy his house. Under the burning gazes of both master and servant, I forced myself to remain calm and pushed open the bathroom door. The air was filled with the scent of expensive essential oils. Using the excuse of searching around the corners, I finally reached up toward the top of the mirror cabinet above the sink. While pretending to search, I whispered. Lang 6, it's Sis Ha. Come out and go home with me. Immediately after, my fingertips touched a small object, slightly square, warm to the touch. At the same time, a familiar chirping voice only I could hear came from above the cabinet. Sis Ha, you're here, you really came back to pick us up. I'm so happy. Hearing the choked-up voice of this little glutton, my lips unconsciously curved into a gentle smile. I turned my palm upward and pressed it against the side of the cabinet, whispering softly. If you're there, climb onto the back of my hand. I'll take you home. Instantly, I felt a rough, tiny sensation on my knuckles, like dozens of microscopic needles brushing across my skin. It didn't hurt, just a strange tickling, goosebump-inducing feeling. But the sensation quickly withdrew. A panicked voice rang in my ear, Lang 6. No. No, Sis Ha. You told us before that there are lots of bacteria on our bodies. If we touch you, you'll get sick. I don't want you to be ill. The strange contact immediately retreated. My nose tingled, and a complicated feeling surged in my chest. I didn't expect a creature from the sewers to remember such a casual remark of mine, and even worry about me like this. I exhaled softly, brushing away the discomfort, and firmly whispered. It's okay, silly. I'm not afraid of germs. Come up here. Hearing that, Lang 6 became overjoyed and quickly crawled onto the back of my hand, its voice filled with gratitude. Sis Ha, you're the best person in the world. I slowly withdrew my hand and held it in front of me. On my pale hand lay an American cockroach, its reddish-brown shell glossy and smooth, lying obediently in a way that was almost horrifying. Needless to say, this absurd scene delivered a critical visual blow to the two men standing guard at the door. This time even Donbai and the old butler simultaneously got goosebumps. Both of them instinctively covered their mouths. Oh my God, Donbai gasped in shock, stumbling backward several steps. The old butler's face turned ashen, his scalp numb. In his mind, he was probably screaming, it's the end of the world, such a pretty young woman, and she's picking up cockroaches with her bare hands? Are today's criminal police recruiting mentally unstable people? As for me, I wasn't feeling any better either. My heart was pounding violently. I was desperately holding back the urge to run and scrub my hands with disinfectant soap, but I still had to maintain the dignity of a professional pet owner. I extended my hand with the cockroach perched on it and smiled brightly at the young heir. Mr. Doan, look, this is the pet I dropped earlier. See how obedient it is? Can I take it away now? Donbai was so terrified that he nearly lost his soul, frantically waving his hands as if driving away evil spirits. "Take it away. Hurry up and take it away. Get it out of my sight immediately. And never let me see you and those things again for even one more second." And just like that, I was openly and justifiably kicked out of the villa. As soon as I stepped out of the gate, I immediately twisted open the bottle cap and carefully let Lang Sao and its treasure of egg sacs reunite with the others. After that, I no longer put the bottle into my bag, but casually held it in my hand, strolling leisurely into the night. After leaving the villa area, I still didn't immediately put the empty plastic bottle away. Instead, I walked slowly along the sidewalk. When I was sure no one was watching, I brought the bottle close to my mouth and began an emergency press conference to interrogate what valuable intelligence the undercover cockroach squad had gathered. Unexpectedly, the moment I opened my mouth, the whole group immediately reported trivial information so enthusiastically that it almost gave me vertigo. One cockroach spoke in a very trendy tone. "This house uses really high-quality wood, sister. It tastes rich and fragrant when we chew it. Not like those moldy plywood pieces in the landfill." Another little one complained. "Human food is so bad now. They clean it up too fast. That piece of cake that fell on the floor, I didn't even get to taste it before the old butler had it cleaned away. Cruel." Another one clicked its tongue. "The fruit in the living room is so fresh it's boring. I prefer fermented fruit smells, the more rotten, the richer the flavor." I massaged my temples in headache and quietly barked to cut off this useless mess. "Enough, enough, stop the food and interior review. Lang 107, you're the leader, you speak first. Forget about eating, report quickly what Don Vijaya did and said after I left the villa this morning." Lang 107, after all, was the squad leader of this mercenary-like group. Its level of professionalism as an undercover agent was completely different from the rest of these amateurs. It cleared its throat and immediately replayed word for word a blackmail conversation between Don Vijaya and General Director Thoy that it had overheard under the sofa that morning. After listening, I nodded slightly. A spark of clarity flashed through my mind. As expected, I was not wrong. People with wealth and power, who even own a collection of luxury cars, would never casually forget who borrowed their vehicle. The excuse of not remembering was just a cover. He clearly knew who had driven that car, and even knew what that person had done when driving up Mount Vong Sun on that rainy night. I pressed my ear against the plastic bottle and whispered. "So during the conversation, did Don Vijaya accidentally mention the real name of the other party?" Lang 107 shook its two antennae. "No, sister. He only called him General Director. Before hanging up, he did curse damn it, but never mentioned his real name." At this point, I let out a cold snort and continued digging deeper. The person who could borrow Don Vijaya's supercar to dispose of a body and then act innocent afterward must be someone with serious background and means. I asked another question. Did that person ever show up at the Don Villa to negotiate? I was only asking casually, but in my mind I had already been 100% certain of the answer. A ruthless person with perfect anti-investigation instincts like the culprit, at a time when the case was being reopened, would absolutely not be foolish enough to show up and risk exposure. As expected, Lang 107 confirmed that no one else had come to the villa. I then asked about Don Vijaya's behavior afterward, and received an answer that made me shake my head helplessly. After making the threatening call, Don Vijaya showed no sign of worry. He casually had servants prepare food, ate his fill, then lounged around playing games on his phone. His mentality was rock solid, extremely careless. That still counts as a significant gain, I murmured, carefully twisting the bottle cap back on and slipping it into my coat pocket. At that moment, I had just walked out to the main gate of the luxurious villa complex. Looking at my watch, there were only 2 or 3 minutes left before the 1-hour limit expired. From a distance, I could already see the security guard holding a rubber baton, ready to come in and escort me out. Seeing me obediently come out on my own, he sighed in relief and repeatedly waved me away, urging me to leave quickly so as not to affect his job. I didn't argue. I politely nodded at the two police officers dozing inside the patrol car, then quickly hailed a taxi and headed straight back to the precinct. As soon as I stepped into the investigation team office, I saw Lam Fong buried in a pile of files, his face full of frustration. Seeing me return, he scratched his head and complained. "Ms. Ha, you've thrown me a really difficult problem. I stayed up all night going through all of Don Vaijia's connections in the real estate industry. From Guangzhou to Yunnan, the number of partners reaches hundreds. Even if I narrow it down to just within the city of Baksun, the list of influential figures who are close to him is still around 20 to 30 people. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack." I pulled up a chair and sat down, then calmly asked a fatal question. "Among those 20 or 30 people, is there anyone with the surname Thoi?" My question was as light as a feather, but it hit Lam Fong like a sledgehammer. He gaped, eyes wide as he stared at me, his jaw almost dropping to his chest. In his mind right now, he was probably screaming 10,000 why questions. Oh heavens, don't tell me that this so-called spiritual ability to sense the aura of disappearing souls can even detect the surname of the killer. Please stay tuned for the next part. Like and follow my channel to get story updates faster. Thank you all very much.